My name is Dan Goodwill, president of Dan Goodwill and Associates. We are a consulting company that helps shippers achieve efficiencies and save money on freight transportation. And we also help carriers become more profitable. Most recently, we've been assisting startup companies in the freight industry, helping them launch their businesses successfully. Over the past few weeks, I've been speaking with a diverse group of individuals in a range of industries. One of the themes I keep hearing is how people, after working from home and masking for the past 27 months, are feeling blue and down. This isolationist life, if you like, is getting on people's nerves. This got me thinking about what can we do to pull ourselves up and get back on a positive track. And as a result, I reached out to someone I've known for the past 15 years who specializes in improving morale, reducing stress, burnout, and turnover. So today I'll be speaking with Allison Graham. Allison is a keynote speaker, a trainer, and author of Take Back Your Weekends, Stress Less, Do More, Be Happier. Allison, welcome. Great to see you again.
It's wonderful to be here with you, and thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited to talk about this topic.
Terrific. So let me begin by asking you, am I the only one feeling blue these days, or is this a theme that you're hearing from some of your friends and colleagues and clients?
You are absolutely not alone. And I think none of us are immune to the impacts of what the pandemic has had, but it's not just the pandemic. Like, you remember before the pandemic, we all had things going on in our lives. Like, burnout was an issue. We just didn't talk about it.
Right.
And so all of us, I believe, are going through it. The question is, do you have the right tools in place in order to overcome it and actually still continue to work and be effective and not go to that point of burnout?
Okay, great. So when people say to you they're feeling blue, why do they feel this way? What is your take when you talk to people about this topic?
I think there are several aspects going on here to consider. So number one, our human brain body existence, right, is not designed to operate under the conditions in which we live.
Right.
The constant pressures, the social media, the expectations that are coming from, keeping up with the Joneses, that piece of the puzzle, the speed of change, all of it combined is just a lot. And but even when you do that, we're not supposed to be doing that in isolation. Whatever it is that we are doing, we're beings who need relationships, we need touch, we need people in our lives, we need variety. And so I think this experience has been very much an eye-opener for people. Am I happy with my life? Am I happy with the people I'm choosing to have in my life? Am I, was I so caught up in the busy, go, that I didn't even notice the patterns that were underlying, that are in my days, that are actually the foundation of how I show up every day. And so when we lost that busy, we lost our masking of our true identities. And it was kind of like, oh, we're pulling back the curtains, not just like on ourselves, going, oh, wait a second, maybe I'm not happy here.
Right. So when you get this feedback, is this usually just on an individual level, or as you're dealing with clients, do you find that some of them, the organization as a whole is feeling blue? What are you finding?
Yeah, and I don't even know if the word is blue, right? I think for some people they're feeling sad. I think what people are consistently feeling is overwhelmed. Overwhelmed, which then shuts us down, which would lead into that blue sensation that you're talking about, as well as a bit of languishing, which is a big word that we all started talking about last year, when that New York Times article came out around languishing, which is not quite burnout, but it's a precursor to burnout. You just kind of feel like, and not really in the mood to do anything, like I'm dialing it in. And that is happening organization-wide.
Okay.
And so what I'm seeing here in the organization, so before I do my flagship training program, which is for a series of 4 learnings and challenges in between for teams, we do a pre-event survey. And consistently what I'm seeing is there's, depending on the organization, it could be that there aren't enough staff, right? So I need somebody else to take my workload away from me in order for me to be good at my job. And that sort of if then X. So if this happens, then I'm going to be less blue. I will be happier. I will be less stressed, insert your why there, is a very common theme that I think is detrimental to our resilience and detrimental to our mental wellness. So there's that theme. The second theme I see is this inability to disconnect from work, right? So when we go to bed at night, if the thing we're thinking about is our to-do list or the work issue that's going on, like I'll stand in front of a room of people, now that we're back in person, I'm hoping for more of that, but I'll be like, who right now is really excited to hear that your colleagues are thinking about work before they go to sleep when their bed hits the pillow
Right.
or their head hits the pillow? And like, nobody wants that. Like nobody wants that.
For sure.
And so if we don't have the mental discipline and the emotional discipline to stop that, then we're never truly going to be able to relax.
Yeah, I guess that's why, that's why you see so many people, they can't shut off work. They've got their iPhones or their whatever tablets they've got, and they're doing emails till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. And, we've created an environment where, as you say, you can't shut off. Do you think, is that part of what's caused this, what they call this great resignation, that people are just so fed up with working on their iPhones till 10, 11 o'clock at night or doing Zoom meetings at night that they just say, I'm just going to take a walk and go down the street?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The great resignation, I believe, is happening for a few reasons. One, it could be feeling like it's a toxic work environment, that they're not feeling, rewarded or valued or whatever. So there's that side of it. The side that I deal with is people think if they quit, their stress level is going to go down. It actually goes back to that if X, then Y thinking. And when you're in an environment that's meeting heavy, meaning every meeting ends at the top of the hour and the next one starts at the top of the hour, when are you supposed to get your work done?
Yeah.
I remember the very first time I said the phrase, take back your weekends. I was with an executive team up north, and about 2:30 in the afternoon, one of the guys started to cry. And he said, I am so sick of working. He said, I work every Saturday and Sunday to get caught up, and it's still not enough. And I'm so scared I'm going to miss my kid's childhood.
Wow.
And if I don't fix this, I have to quit. Now, in hindsight, I recognize that that was very brave for him to admit in front of his, I guess there were 7 or 8 people in the room. They're all executives at an organization and senior level.
Yeah.
And when we dove in, what was happening is the way that they were working, the way that their days were structured, where it was all meetings and there was nowhere to get away from interruptions and there was no focused time to get the actual work done. That's why people have to work late at night, early in the morning, and on the weekends, because the way the work week, the traditional hours are spent is broken. And so if you're sitting there and you're going, you know what, I'm done. I do not want to be putting my kids to bed and then hopping back on my computer. Then of course, if you don't have another option, if you don't have a system to fix that, of course you're going to quit.
Yeah.
Like that would be natural.
Yeah.
Although, fun story, Dan.
Yeah.
A fun story. So a friend, it was not really a fun story, but a friend of mine, she was so miserable at work because she had this boss who was toxic, right? Like just not a good, and we've all been there, right? At some point in our careers. And she ultimately ended up quitting. She's like, I'm out. 30 days later, did that same boss not get recruited by the same company that she worked for and became her boss again?
Oh, no.
And this is why, if we're caught in a destructive stress cycle, the if X then Y thinking won't work, won't solve the problem.
Wow. So, when we think of where we're at right now, we're in the 6th wave of the pandemic. At night, we go home on TVs, we see images of bombed out cities and hospitals and schools and train stations in Ukraine. We see really horrifying photos of dead bodies lying in the streets. We're all feeling it in the pocketbook right now. You go to the gas station to fill your car, and then I think for most people, it's probably over $100 just to fill a gas tank. And of course, we all know what's going on in food prices. They're scary as well. So there's all this negativity, but then on the other hand, there's, we see our politicians, and I know here in Ontario, we've got an election coming up, so that may be a big part of it, but trying to ease the mask mandate. We're seeing packed stadiums now when the Leafs are in the playoffs, full house and lots of people watching the Blue Jays. Good news, at least in the political front, North America and Western Europe seem to be more united than they've been in recent memory. And then on top of that, we've had some beautiful weather lately here in Eastern Canada. It's spring and it's just beautiful. So is this, with this good stuff, being able to throw your mask away and go to a Leafs game and get out and, get on the links and play some golf, is that enough now to pull us out of these doldrums, or are there some specific strategies and techniques that we need to employ to kind of de-stress and help us get more on a positive track? What do you think?
I think the short answer is no, it's not enough. They are Band-Aid behaviors that are awesome. Like, how exciting for some people that you can get rid of the mask. For other people, that's actually more anxiety producing and can cause more of a challenge. So there's both sides of that. It's not enough, because it's what happens next winter when we're in the, God forbid, the 9th wave, right? And we're going down into the doldrums of the winter. We have to find solutions that will shift how we're perceiving all of that. Great example is the news cycle. The news cycle is devastating. There is at every moment something that you can turn on that can pull you into the depths of despair, period.
Yeah, no question.
How you react to that, there's an emotional level, the full adversity and feeling that piece is very natural. So you might have a feeling. How often you actually engage in watching the news and how much of it you consume is completely within your control.
Right.
One of my coaching clients, executive, he was really struggling. He originally came to me because he couldn't take vacation and he was always worried about work. We solved that problem. And then the pandemic happened. And about 6 weeks in, he was like, Allison, I am just feeling like overwhelmed and anxious. And it wasn't natural for his state. That wasn't his natural reaction.
Right.
And as we dove in, it turned out that he had the news cycle on 24/7 in every room he was in. It was in his office. It was in his kitchen. It was in his living room, and he was consuming. And you remember what it was like when the pandemic started, when it was just like 24/7, there was no other news, and it was bringing down his emotional state. And so turning off the news, being informed, and limiting the amount of information that we're actually consuming is hugely important to our own mental health. There is no person who has the ability to withstand the severity of what's happening on a global scale and still show up and be optimistic every day. So it's like, if you're a news junkie, figure out, how much am I willing to watch? Can I cut what I'm watching in half and still be informed?
Yeah. Well, that's a very good strategy. Can you share with the viewers that are watching this video some of your other core strategies to help people? I think that's terrific. Any other ideas that you could share with us?
I have so many ideas. So I'm glad you asked.
Well, even a few.
One of the things, yeah, okay. So a lot of it is about perception.
Yeah.
How are we interpreting everything that's happening around us? See, when we can't relax from our workload, if we just take that for an example, if we're stressing about it, then we're so intertwined. Our capacity is so intertwined with our being. There's no way to disconnect, right? And this is what I work with teams on. But there's a little metaphor that I use called the ice cube that became the snowman that I think is so critical to understand how destructive stress is created and then what we can do to actually change it. If you were to imagine every task that you need to do each day and every obstacle that you need to solve each day as an ice cube, and your job is to melt the ice cube as efficiently and effectively as possible. The sooner you do that, the sooner you can get on with your day, you can relax, you can go on to the next project, whatever the case may be. And we only have so much capacity over the course of a day to think, to feel, to be, to do in order to deal with those ice cubes. Okay, make sense?
Yep.
Sounds easy.
Yep.
But as part of the human experience, we don't just melt ice cubes. Oh no. Nope. We have access to this entire mound of snow available to us at any one time. And this snow is represented by misplaced emotion to start. So now we take this ice cube, let's say we've got to do our taxes, and we're scared that we're not going to be able to pay the tax bill, or we have to do our taxes and we have anxiety about that process because maybe we've had a bad experience. So we're going to put it in there, mash it in some snow. Now we've got the snowman bottom.
Yep.
Then we take the ice cube and we add on a little negative storyline, right? Let's just say you have to do a project or a presentation or something, okay? Or a report. Actually, I've got a good story about a report with a client. Okay, so we got to put that in there, and now we're going to put in some negative storyline. Another layer of the snowman. So nobody's going to read this stupid thing. Why am I doing this? Why didn't my colleagues do it? They're dropping the ball again. These reports are stupid. Who wants this information? Like, add on whatever storyline you want to add.
Yep.
Then we take another layer of snow for the snowman head, and that is our barriers to performance. It's represented by barriers to performance. Those might be things like, I'm going to worry about it. I'm going to procrastinate. I'm going to resent it. I have 31 of them in the book, Take Back Your Weekends, that I've identified that can make an issue that we need to deal with even harder than it needs to be. So now when we think about those ice cubes are the only thing that really has to be melted. That's our job. Those are the tasks and obstacles that we get paid to do. But because of the human experience, we've added on all these all these snow, and we still have to melt the ice cube that's in the middle of the snowman.
Right.
So when you think about how that steals our capacity unnecessarily. So a friend of mine, well, a client and friend, I always say they're my friends because they're my clients, and like, my clients become my friends. That's how it works when you coach with people over time and do this kind of deep work. But we went out for lunch. She's an executive at a multinational working at the local level. And I said, how are things going? She goes, awful. Work is awful. I'm like, oh, God, tell me more. She said, 3 weeks ago, head office sent down this directive for this new reporting system. They don't get it. They don't know. They are so disrespectful. Nobody's going to read this anymore. Nobody understands how hard it is for me on the ground. They don't know how overwhelmed I already am. Talk about misplaced emotion, negative storyline, and a barrier to performance.
Right.
And I said, okay, so my gosh, this must be big. How long is this report going to take you? She looks at me, she leans back in her chair, starts laughing. She's like, 15 minutes. And I'm like, so you spent 15 minutes or 3 weeks procrastinating, angry, building a story around a report and the people at head office for a task that was going to take you 15 minutes. And she's like, yeah. So then we unpack the snowman, right? And figure out, okay, what is the storyline? What was the real issue? What's the real ice cube that was causing the problem? And build from there. And so that becomes how destructive stress is created.
Sure. So as you unpack these snowmen, as you say,
yeah.
Are you finding, for example, that that helps reduce some of the turnover that people, once they've gone through the process with you, feel happier, more fulfilled in their jobs, and companies are in a better position to retain their employees?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Because if we can blast through the snow and we can get a common language for the entire team to be operating from, and a way to perceive all of the tasks and the obstacles that are happening in our day-to-day, if we can get everybody on the same page, we can literally stop the destructive stress culture.
Okay.
I was working with a firm and they, like we were talking, I was saying, just because something goes wrong doesn't mean we need to emotionally attach to it and get all bent out of shape. And then I start seeing all the nudges, right? Like going and I'm like, any good facilitator? I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Hey, what's this little secret nudge code going on in the background? And it turned out with the company, whenever something went wrong with a client, and no, it's important work they were doing in fairness, but the entire company got involved. And so there would have been, 30-ish people who were involved in this.
Right.
Blame game, resentment, going on and on. Hey, whose fault is this? And I'm like, okay, well, you guys are doing this drama. Who is talking to the client and who is fixing the problem? And the answer was no one. Nobody talks to the client till the problem is fixed, and nobody fixes the problem until we've made blame and we've accurately identified who actually caused the problem.
Right.
I'm like, okay, what if we just eliminated all of that and we came up with a strategy to address the problem so they would stop happening as frequently as they did? And we just went into, what's the real ice cube? What's the issue that needs to be solved? Self-awareness, how am I responding to my whole problem-solving framework? And then get into solution activation mode as quickly as possible and melt that ice cube, forgetting all the snow. I don't know how many hours, hundreds of hours we were able to pull back in their existence as a company, but it would be measured in the hundreds over the course of a year.
Excellent. Great. So let's add another layer to this thing, which is this whole issue now of people working from home. Gosh, like so many people I know and I've been in that mode, or really still in that mode. You drive up and down my street and you see all the cars in the driveway, everybody's fiendishly working from their little office in their home now. And a lot of people become very comfortable with that, actually. And I guess I want to get your thoughts on what does that do in terms of happiness, in terms of getting people back to work? What are your thoughts on this whole issue?
I think there are some people who love it and some people who dread it. And as a leader, you've got to address both. If you have people who dread it and are resisting and they're going to quit because they don't want to come home, I'm going to ask you to really examine why you feel you need to bring them back into the office and the way that you're trying to bring them back to the office that those people on your team are resisting. For some leaders, when we really dig deep, it's ultimately about control. They feel like that they don't know if people are being productive or how they're being productive, or they have this thinking that if somebody's in the office, they're going to be more productive. I mean, I would argue if somebody's in the office, they're going to be less productive, because now we've got the water cooler conversation, chit chat, the, constant interruption, somebody showing up at your door. You can't just turn off the Zoom, right? You have that, the commuting, are they going to be tired? Like all of those pieces of the puzzles need to go into consideration. And for the people who love it, okay, great. But then how do we maintain their productivity? Because for many companies, the productivity soared, and for some it plummeted, right? Like it just, if you didn't have systems in place with the virtual learning, or not learning, sorry, I do virtual learning, but with the virtual workplace, then you could be at a higher level of risk and for productivity dipping. So I would really look at who do you have on your team? What are your true intentions for bringing them back in if they're resisting? And how are you going to put structures in place so that you can actually serve the people who are coming back to maintain their productivity and not have this situation? Like if you come back to the office, we don't want to have it now that people have this habit of working from home and now they're going to do both. Like how detrimental would that be to your culture? If you have people coming to work, spending 2 hours on a commute a day, and then going home and turning on their computer at 10 o'clock at night.
Oh yeah, that's not the way to go. Sometimes I wonder too, so many companies now are on Microsoft Teams, and you look at their calendars and they have a scheduling assistant, and gosh, as you were saying earlier on in this discussion, that some folks have just so many meetings all day long. You just wonder, is this kind of what folks are doing to ensure that their employees are actually working all day? Is this the kind of a regimentation type of thing to ensure I get my 8 hours out of my employees or 12 hours out of my employees by scheduling these meetings all the time?
It's a little bit, I think there are several reasons that these meetings are done. Yes, for some leaders, that would be the case, right? If you're on a meeting, then I know you're actively involved in working.
Right.
The caution is if you're on a meeting, you're not actually doing your work.
Right.
Because every meeting creates new tasks or creates new obstacles that need to be solved. And if we're not leaving any time available for having that happen, then that's great. And if you're in a situation where other people can schedule based on your availability on Teams or any sort of a group calendar, I'm going to encourage you to block off your work blocks first.
Sure.
Get them in your calendar so that you're not having to do it outside of work hours if that's not what you want to do.
Yeah.
Part of the whole concept of take back your weekends is I don't care if somebody wants to work on a Saturday or work on, midnight or at 5 o'clock in the morning if they love it. I work on the weekend all the time, but I do it because I'm inspired. I don't do it because my work week is so off the tracks that I don't have any time left over to do the actual work.
Sure. Okay. So maybe as we kind of wrap up our little chat here, maybe you can just talk a little bit about your approach and how do you approach different organizations, and what kind of a process do you put in place with your clients?
So my service offering, essentially, the goal is to stop the destructive stress cycle. When we get people to stress less, they can ultimately end up doing more and in less time. So we want to increase outputs per hour and have them be happier while they're doing it.
Yep.
And the way I can deliver that service is through keynote speeches at conferences, right? So 45 minutes to 75 minutes to give everybody a little bit of a teaser. And that works. That's generally a precursor to going into what I call my flagship training program. And this is done in small cohorts across the leadership team and then into middle management and then eventually out into the group, where we do a 8 to 12 week program. And I can walk people through the entire problem solving framework that is applied to all of these issues that I talked about to blast through that snow. And so either of those, of course, I have online programs and all of that, but it really begins with a conversation. And so I'm going to encourage people, if you've got a team that you feel is stuck in the destructive stress cycle, go to my website at allisongraham.com and just book a call with me, right? A discovery call, 20 minutes, and we can see if I can help your team.
Terrific. Well, listen, Allison, this has just been wonderful. Thank you so much for your advice and your thoughts on this whole topic. I hope you've enriched a lot of folks that have listened in, and it's been terrific having this discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
It has been a privilege. Okay, thanks a lot.